Picture an ancient, completely impenetrable fortress. We're talking massive stone walls rising into the sky, designed to repel any invading army and project just absolute power. Troy was the ultimate stronghold, a place where the citizens believed they were entirely, untouchably safe. But the story of Troy has captivated humanity for thousands of years, not because of how incredibly strong those walls were, but because of what they ultimately failed to protect.
So, it really begs the question, how does a city that literally cannot be broken by brute force end up in absolute ruin? To really understand the fall of Troy, we have to look way past the battlefield. We need to look past the swords, the shields, and the armies, and instead examine the unseen psychological vulnerabilities hiding behind those walls. Because ultimately, Troy was defeated by a profound failure of human judgment.
You know, a city can look incredibly strong on the outside, but if the people inside are tired, overconfident, or trapped in false assumptions, well, that outer strength kind of means nothing. Troy possessed walls, a fierce reputation, and immense power. What it desperately lacked, though, was wisdom, unity, clear judgment, and just pure adaptability. Blindness isn't just ignorance, it's the failure to notice that massive gap between physical defenses and mental vulnerabilities. Because here's a fundamental truth: defense is not the same as security. Physical walls can really only delay an enemy, right? They absolutely cannot make leaders wise or somehow replace good decision-making. Troy's outer strength could never compensate for its inner weakness. It's a harsh, harsh truth of warfare.
And Troy didn't just fall in a single dramatic flash. Not at all. The city had been under unrelenting pressure for years. And long conflicts do something very specific to the human mind. They just wear down your judgment. As a war drags on, confidence wobbles, and exhausted leaders become far, far more likely to accept a highly risky shortcut just to make the pain finally stop. The anatomy of this whole collapse was a slow, chronological unraveling. Years of siege basically set the stage. From year 1 to 9, exhaustion just chipped away at their clarity. By the 10th year, the Greeks realized direct attacks aren't working and shift their tactics. Then, in the span of just one final day, a convincing gift is left behind. That night, the city trusts the wrong signal. By dawn, the city falls from within. Every single step made the next one possible. This is where the Greeks, guided by the incredibly cunning strategist Odysseus, understood something absolutely critical. Troy was almost impossible to crack head-on. So, instead of just endlessly smashing their strength against stone, Odysseus orchestrated a brilliant pivot toward deception. Actually, let's take a step back. It's quite simple when you think about it. They realized they didn't need to break the door down if they could just get the Trojans to open it for them. There's a brilliant thought that captures this perfectly. The winning move is the push that causes the other side to make the wrong decision on its own. In a lot of conflicts, the victor isn't the one who hits the hardest. It's the one who truly understands their opponent's psychology. The Greeks deliberately engineered a situation designed to make Troy cooperate in its own destruction. It was, for all intents and purposes, advanced psychological warfare. Imagine waking up on that fateful morning. The tired Trojans look out over the plains, and the massive Greek army is just gone. And in their place stands this towering wooden horse. So what is it? Is it a trick, a victory, an offering of surrender? It was a moment of suffocating uncertainty, all wrapped up in desperate optimism. The genius of the trap didn't force an answer. It presented a completely irresistible question. Now, historians definitely still debate the exact mixture of myth, legend, and actual history behind all of this. But the famous Trojan horse itself represents a timeless tactical truth. It was a beautifully executed psychological operation, disguised as a peace offering, signaling the end of a 10-year nightmare. The horse bypassed physical defenses entirely. How? By speaking directly to the desperate hope of the people inside. But here's the catch. Hope is incredibly easy to manipulate. The Trojans, under agonizing pressure, were desperate for relief. The horse provided a really convenient narrative that justified lowering their caution. And the city fell exactly at this intersection, when relentless external pressure finally met internal permission. Pure desperation made them willing to ignore literally every warning sign. It was this tragic, almost perfect alignment of forces. You've got a population completely worn down by the stress of a long war, which completely destroyed their clarity. Then you have the Greek strategy pivoting away from direct attacks and straight into deception. The horse appears, something that looks incredibly useful, mixing hope with deep uncertainty. And because of all that prior exhaustion, the Trojans' judgment failed completely at the final hurdle.
They trusted the wrong signal, and the trap functioned flawlessly.
As we know, deception often succeeds by looking familiar, harmless, or welcome. A hidden threat is one thing, sure, but a hidden threat that appears to confirm your deepest hopes, that is infinitely more dangerous. The deception succeeded here because it offered emotional comfort. It looked exactly like the peace they had been praying for, perfectly hiding the absolute destruction waiting inside. So the city was finally faced with a choice, and it wasn't some thunderous battle cry that doomed them. It was a quiet, collective judgment call made by tired people under immense uncertainty. They decided to pull the massive wooden horse through the gates. And at that exact moment, the city wasn't conquered by force. It was conquered by persuasion.
Like the old saying goes, what was outside is now inside. Once the horse was brought in, an invisible line was just irreversibly crossed. The danger was no longer out there on the battlefield, it was integrated into the very heart of the city. A threat outside the walls can always be resisted, but a threat willingly accepted into the home, that's nearly impossible to remove.
From there, the final breach was literally just a matter of time. The Greeks didn't need to be stronger, they just needed to locate the actual weakness. Troy's formidable physical defenses were entirely outrun by a strategy aimed at their decision-making. The massive stone wall just completely stopped mattering the second the mind was breached.
And that brings us to the enduring legacy of the story, right where ancient history, legend, and myth all kind of blur into this one universal truth. The real weapon wasn't bronze, it wasn't iron, and it wasn't even the soldiers hiding in the dark. It was human vulnerability. Even the strongest, most impenetrable places on Earth will collapse when outer strength is undermined by inner misjudgment.
The fall of Troy remains one of history's absolute most profound cautionary tales. It really forces us to ask, where do we see this Trojan horse pattern today? When does the promise of quick relief look so incredibly attractive that all critical judgment is just completely abandoned? The legend endures because it reveals a haunting aspect of human nature, that the absolute most dangerous threats often arrive disguised as the very things we desire the most.